You guys ready for your new home? What's up guys? Welcome to another episode of Jetfish. If you saw last week's video, you noticed that the Fowlers toad enclosure was pretty boring. The substrate wasn't great, there's nothing really going on, there's no movement, but there's a lot of potential there to do something really cool. So the plan is, we're gonna take some glass and put up a wall in between that aquarium. Half of it, we're gonna fill completely with water so we can hold some fish in there. That's gonna feed into a water fixture, like a drip wall or a waterfall, which is gonna be the source of water for the toads. I think it's gonna be really cool. I've never tried anything like this before, so let's see what happens. Alright guys, so here's the 40 breeder that I normally keep the toads in. I've already removed them, removed all the substrate, and gave it a good rinse. Now I want to make sure it's completely dry. It's going to be really important when we start caulking. Now we got two pieces of glass here, 11 by 14. I got this at Home Depot. It was fairly inexpensive actually. But I couldn't find a piece of glass that was the exact size I needed, and frankly I didn't really feel like cutting any glass, so I got two pieces of glass that were the right height, but they're actually skinnier than what I needed, so I could just overlap the two. Because we're going to decorate this wall, it doesn't really matter what it looks like, we're just going to cover it up anyway. Always be sure to wear some thick gloves with working with glass. In this case, I have towels. Don't use towels. Now it's time to connect these two pieces of glass. To do this we're going to use some silicone, but first we have to figure out how one opens a tube of silicone. It's harder than it looks. Now that we've got that figured out, we're going to apply a generous bead on both pieces of glass so that the silicone can adhere not only to the glass, but also to the other bead of silicone. Now it's important to mention here that we're using GE Silicone 1. This is 100% silicone, completely aquarium safe, and strong enough to handle water. Now it's time to go collect some rocks. Luckily I live by a small wooded area where I can go get all the rocks and sticks that I want. But I do like to boil them just to be sure, make sure I'm not bringing anything bad into my aquariums. So it's been a couple hours now since I applied the silicone. You can see I returned with a suspiciously similar Hawaiian shirt to the one I was wearing before. I've got a very simple sense of fashion. This guy's now strong enough to support itself, though it's not strong enough yet to put in water. That's going to take about 24 hours. You can also see that this is completely stuck to my piece of paper, and now I got to peel it away like a real sad egg. Now it's time to decorate. The first step of the rock wall is applying the rocks. To do this, we're going to put a generous dab of silicone on each rock, and then stick it to the glass. Unlike the divider, these rocks aren't necessary for the structural integrity of the tank, so we're not going to waste our time doing silicone on both surfaces. As you can see, this already took forever. Don't worry about small gaps in between the rocks, we're going to cover that up later. Alright, now it's time to get this divider up. Oh, there goes my light. As you can see, I've got a Home Depot bucket with some rocks in it that's going to hold this divider in place while the silicone cures. This is about the time I noticed that I made it too long, so this is just going to be a little crooked, but that's okay. And now it's time to seal this guy. So we're using the same GE 100% silicone, and the idea is to get one long, consistent bead across this. You want to make sure it's completely covered. And in this case, again, it's going to be completely decorated on both sides, so I'm being a little bit more messy than one might do. I'm also not very good at this, as you can tell, but it will seal, and that's what matters. Try to not do what you can see me do, where these little strings come out the silicone and they'll just get stuck everywhere throughout the tank. That's going to be a real pain later, but yeah, learn from my mistakes, I guess. Once it's completely sealed, let it cure for a couple hours. Make sure it's good and sturdy, it can hold the weight of the divider. We're going to turn the tank on its side, and now we're going to finish decorating and cover up some of those holes. Now it's time to clean up the rock wall and take care of some of the more finer details. So to start with, we're going to take a razor blade and cut out some of this excess silicone. We've got little beads that kind of just stuck to the sides, as well as the excess on the actual seam itself. And the next thing we're going to do is take some Gorilla Glue. Any kind of super glue will work here. All super glue, once it dries, is completely water and aquarium safe. And then we're going to take a mix of this cocoa fiber and sphagnum moss. and just kind of stick those in between the cracks of the rocks. This is going to help it give it a nice natural look and cover up some of that white that's poking through the rocks. Real quick though, before we do that, I'm going to attach this filter/water pump, which we're going to use for the drip wall fixture. I'll get more into detail later when I do the scaping on how this is actually going to work. But for now, I'm just going to show you to attach it. We have a filter that uses a tube, right, rather than an overflow. So we put the filter down at the bottom, and then I used hot glue actually. Super glue would be ideal, but I used hot glue because I'm impatient. And I just glued the tube as well as the power cable along the edge of the rock wall. Finally, we can finish up by covering these cracks with super glue, cypress mulch, and sphagnum moss. Once this was done, I filled the aquarium side with water and let it sit for a day, just to make sure everything was working properly. When I came back the next day, there was no water on the other side, didn't appear to be any leaks, looked like everything went well. So I drained it and got ready to finish the tank. And that's when I saw there was a crack. Great. My silicone work was fine, messy, but fine. The rocks didn't have any issues. Everything was good, I just forgot to consider the thickness of the glass that I was using. Standard aquarium glass is about 6 millimeters thick. The glass I was using, about 2 millimeters thick. So the glass itself was just not strong enough to handle the weight. Really, I'm lucky it was just a crack. After this realization, I took a second, contemplated my life, debated quitting everything, and then started over. Well, it turns out the only 6 millimeter thick glass I could find around here, at least during the pandemic, is a whole nother aquarium. So luckily Petco has a $1 a gallon sale going on right now. So for 20 bucks, I got this great 20 long. Contrary to last time I tried this time I need a pane of glass that's the right height, this time wider than what I need. This of course means that I'm gonna have to cut some glass, but first, I gotta take this thing apart. Much more qualified people than me have made videos on how to take an aquarium apart. It's not super complicated, but it's a little bit of work and it's a little dangerous. So please be careful, watch a Joey DIY video or something, and wear gloves, otherwise you might hurt yourself. So let's just say I was able to get the glass I needed. I managed to do it without breaking anything, but I couldn't save the rim, as you can see. I definitely did not do it correctly or safely, and I've got the injuries to prove it. But it got done. So now I've got this long sheet of glass. It's too big, right? I need to cut it now. So cutting glass involves taking a glass cutter and scoring along the line that you want to cut it at.
It actually goes even as far back as to the...
It doesn't actually cut the glass, this just creates a perforation, right? It weakens it at the point. And then essentially what you do is you grab it and break it on that point. But maybe be prepared to hold the piece that you break off, that way it doesn't shatter all over your kitchen floor. So at this point, we're basically at square one. But this does give us some opportunities to do some things better. First of all, I'm gonna put some tape on the sides, and this is gonna help catch some of the excess silicone. Just a little bit, just to kind of keep it contained, and it'll make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And now, at this point, we're ready to do the silicone. We're gonna do this exactly the same way we did before. We want one long, steady bead, plenty thick enough to get the control and the coverage we need, but small enough to still look as good as possible. And the tape's gonna help a lot with that. Again, we're gonna boil up some rocks, and then we're gonna repeat the exact same decoration protocol as before, except this time I went ahead and attached the wall first. For the aquarium side, I decided to go easy on myself and just use a background. Just a basic blue. This is going to be a planted tank, so I'm not really too worried about that. But the one issue is that this is going to have to go on the inside. So I'll be using super glue instead of the traditional adhesives you may see. And I'm not really worried about the whole bottom part, because that's going to be covered by substrate and probably some grass of some sort. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. I know that got a little crazy in there, but hey, we learned, right? So that's the end of the building process. The next video is gonna be actually scaping the tank. So we're gonna finish it next week. There'll be toads in the tank. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell, and share it. All right, I'll see y'all next week.